Calaroga Shark Media.
Hello, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Somebody signed me up for the New York City Marathon tomorrow. Time to eat some pasta. Jeff Foxworthy spoke to the CV Independent about his traveling. And Jeff explained back in the day, I would lease a plane and I would fly home every night, no matter where my show was, unless I was on the West Coast. I know firsthand, because I worked with Jeff, that is accurate. Jeff said I would fly home every single night and get in at 1 or 2 in the morning, and I'd get up at 6 and take the kids to school. I'd go pick them up from school, and then I'd go get on a plane and fly out and do another show. Did that for about 12 years. In fact, not long ago, I said to my wife, when did I sleep? But it gave me 100 more days a year with my kids. Once they grew up, I'm like, this is expensive. So I started flying Delta again, so that's what I do now most of the time. If I'm going to the West Coast, I'll try and do 2 or 3 stops in a row and then come home. It's more relaxed, it's a little easier on the body and the wallet than it used to be. I'm really enjoying this season of life, and I still really enjoy what I do. Some people say, when are you going to retire? And I'm like, crap, I still love doing it. I just don't love doing it at the pace I did it 20 years ago. Now my joke is, you're paying me to get on a plane and sleep in a hotel room? I'll do the show for free. So every night when those lights go down and the light hits the floor, I'm like, I've got the best job in the whole world. Hey, Jeff, you saw Ron White, unretired, right? And you saw Bill Engvall came out and did a charity show. I think you got to pick up the phone. I know Larry's in. You got to call the other two and be like, hey, guys, we could make a lot of money. One more ride. Let's do it. Blue Collar Comedy Tour. One more. Come on, Jeff. Pick up the phone. Jeff said, I maybe do 50 shows a year now. When I first started, I think the first 8 years in a row, I did at least 500 shows a year. It was almost like the Malcolm Gladwell thing. You've got to do something 10,000 times to get really good at it. So that was kind of my approach. Jeff watches out for fatigue and says, you can't write when you're exhausted, but it's also something you can't force. Kenny Rogers said to me one time that the best careers in entertainment are like a lava lamp. You heat up for a little bit, then you kind of cool down. Then you come back and you heat up again, and then you cool down. Yeah, like if you came back with, say, the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. Larry's in. Pick up the phone. Convince Ron, and then Bill's a cool guy. Bill will do it. You got to convince Ron. What Kenny Rogers meant by that, which is when you hit those hot spots, it's exhausting. You can't sustain at that level. I had that in the beginning with You Might Be a Redneck stuff, and then doing the Tonight Show in Vegas and stuff, and then it cooled off a little bit, and then we came back with the Blue Collar Comedy Tour, and it heated back up for several years, and then it cooled off a little bit, and then I was doing Fifth Grader. You know, Jeff, if you picked up the phone, Larry will do it. You just got to convince Ron, and then Bill will fall in line. It's time to heat up again. Jeff said, for me, I think I've always remained interested in stand-up because I've gotten to do other things that kind of satisfy that urge or curiosity. There's just something about standing there and making people laugh. It just makes you feel so good. Salon caught up with Reggie Watts, and they asked Reggie Watts, if I'm moving to Montana, what are the top 5 rules for a black guy moving to Montana? Reggie Watts said, rules for a black guy? I don't know. Growing up there, the thing is, people are genuinely pretty nice. They might be suspicious at first, but I noticed that sometimes that suspicious isn't necessarily because you're black. I mean, it's definitely a part of it, but it's not just that. It's that you're a stranger. It's, I don't know anything about you, and I'm going to treat you as a stranger until something clicks. Once something clicks, everybody's super sweet, and they're really nice, and you're done. That's it. I get it. It's like when someone comes into the village. It's a tribal reaction, right? It's like you're in your tribe, you're in your village, and then someone comes in and you're like, who's the stranger? I don't know who the stranger is. Well, the stranger helped with water yesterday, and the stranger helped build a fire, so stranger okay, now not a stranger. In my experience, that's why I kind of learned to be as useful and funny as possible, and for better or for worse. They asked Reggie Watts, how long can you stay in Great Falls before you get on the road? Reggie said, yeah, I hear that. That's a great question. I'd say in general, about 10 days. I think 10 days is a good amount, and then I'm just missing my friends because I have so many friends in LA, and I do have friends in Great Falls, but there's only so much you can do there. I do comedy and I do music. I kind of need to be around a place that has comedy and music. Great Falls, for as cool as it is, doesn't have those things in abundance, so I do tend to miss it. I love this question. All right, Reggie Watts, we're making a movie about you. We're not going to ask you who plays you. We're going to ask you who doesn't play you, who's not on the list. His answer, not on the list? Bill Cosby. And then he added, Tyrese, geez, oh my God. Yeah, I don't know. Who should play him? Probably some young kid that no one knows. I think that's what it'd have to be, because otherwise I hate it when famous actors take on mundane characters. The whole time I'm like, am I not going to be able to tell it's that actor? The whole time I'm like, that's pretty good. That almost made me feel like I don't think it's that actor. Just hire somebody that nobody has an association with. It's way easier. Healthline caught up with Howie Mandel about his OCD. Howie shared that I wouldn't learn to tie my shoes because I didn't want to touch the laces because they had touched the ground, so everybody bullied me. And I didn't have a friend in school because I would just rather them think I can't tie my laces. He talked about his younger brother holding up the laundry hamper lid during fights to ward him off. Howie said, I'd melt and scream in terror and do anything he wanted. I remember I met Howie Early in my run at Sirius, he was the first person I ran into that did the fist bump. Jerry Seinfeld, I remember being the second person. The fist bump has become a lot more common, especially post-COVID. But, going back 20 years, that was like, oh, what do I do here? I bump your fist? Okay, that's new. That's fun. Howie said, everything bothered me. I just couldn't move on in life unless there were things made my way, not only by me, but by everybody who was in my periphery. It was just brushed off as the quirkiness of Howie. Not anybody diagnosed or said, well, this is strange, this is different. Why is he so obsessed with the washing and the cleaning? All the other things I needed to do. I didn't want to tell anybody that I had a mental health problem. I thought it was a sign of weakness. It was embarrassing. So as I sit here and talk to you today, this is 180 degrees from where I was in my 40s. John Cleese discussed Monty Python with GB News and said Python were the early targets of cancel culture. John Cleese spoke to the Sunday Times and said Monty Python were the early targets of cancel culture. People don't like to have their cherished ideas punctured or questioned. We all love to live in our own closed systems of thought, to be surrounded by people who think a bit like us. That's what happens on the internet, too, where you get those blasted echo chambers. It's why comedy is even more important today as a way of pricking those bubbles, opening them up, letting in fresh air. It's good for all of us. The problem is that cutting-edge comedy becomes difficult if a joke transgresses someone's idea of good taste, and that means the comedian is banned for life. It subverts the creative impulse. All right, John, would your comedy from the 70s and 80s work in today's times? Cleese said, the trick with creativity is to understand that it's not a talent, it's a frame of mind. You have to get away from fear and doubt. You have to get into a place of playfulness and curiosity so you can find connections and push boundaries. Cancel culture tends to make people less broad in their thinking, more literal-minded. It is together to make funny or intellectually interesting associations. In cultural terms, it's dangerous. I'm so old, I'm not bothered about getting canceled, but as a young man starting out, it might be different. Firdaus talked to Outlook India about choosing to play smaller venues. He said, I like to remove the trappings of comfort from my shows. I could have done the comedy special at a huge stadium with numerous cameras focusing on me from different angles, but I wanted to keep it simple, and Netflix was gracious enough to agree to that. In this special, there's no set. There's just one stool. There's no production as such. There's only some sand on the floor. There's not even any enhanced lighting. The special rides on the words that come out of the comedian's mouth, so I like to scare myself in that sense. Let's see who's at the 312 Comedy Festival in Chicago tonight, where they don't believe in posting the schedule with using calendar technology, alphabetical only, really annoying. Let me scroll down and see if I see November 4th anywhere. Nate Bargatze at the Chicago Theater, 85 South at the Wintrust Arena, Russell Peters at the Rosemont. I've been in that venue, good place to see Russell. That's probably a good choice for tonight. Michael Che at the Riviera, also good choice. Ari Shaffir at the Vic. Wow, combination of theater and performer. That might have to be the move. Ari Shaffir at the Vic tonight. Greg Robinson and the Nasty Delicious at Park West. Chad Daniels at the Chicago Improv. And some smaller shows around town. Now let's check out the New York Comedy Festival, who totally understands calendar technology. Some of the shows. Aaron Chen at Union Hall at 5 o'clock. You may remember me playing some clips from Aaron when we were covering the Sydney International Comedy Festival. Aaron's pretty good. And a 5 o'clock show doesn't run up against anything. That's a good choice. Aaron Chen, Union Hall, 5 o'clock. If you're into comedy, I recommend that one. Jeff Ross at the Hard Rock at 7. Alana Glazer at BAM at 8 o'clock. Sam Morril, the theater at MSG, 8:30. And some smaller shows around town. The festival's just getting started here. As we get into next weekend, we'll see some pretty heavy hitters, but not a bad night of comedy on a Saturday night. Unless you're running a marathon tomorrow, you don't want to be at a comedy show till midnight. Go to bed. Sabrina Wu is one of Vulture's 25 comedians you should know. Vulture asked Sabrina about their writing process, and they said, my answer might be more about style than joke writing. I realize that I kind of hate jokes. Puns give me a headache, and Mr. X make me feel hollow inside. I especially hate when the comedian uses a hot-button issue like trans rights or abortion as a cheap setup for some stupid take that I know they don't actually believe in, but they tell the joke anyway because they know it can get a laugh. An example of that they used is, abortion is like pooping because, and then said, shut up, shut up, shut up. I prefer watching comedians who are giving me their honest take on things. When I was starting out, I spent a lot more time with pen and paper trying to force out setup and punchline. These days, I generate a lot of material through gossiping and ranting with my close friends. I feel like the stuff I care enough to talk about offstage tends to make more compelling material on stage. And that's your comedy news for today. You can follow this show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Pocket Casts, Overcast, wherever you get your shows. See you tomorrow.